The phone started ringing at 11:47 p.m. Ethan Graves almost ignored it. The farmhouse was quiet except for the slow ticking of the kitchen clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. A half-finished beer sat on the wooden table beside his calloused hand. Outside, the Montana night pressed against the windows, black fields, cold wind, nothing moving for miles. Unknown number. Ethan stared at the screen. One ring. Two. Three. His thumb hovered over asterisk, asterisk, decline, asterisk, asterisk. Probably a drunk from the bar. Probably someone dialing the wrong number. He exhaled slowly and answered. Yeah? For a moment, there was nothing but a faint crackle of phone static. Then a voice. Small. Shaking. Mr. Iron? Ethan froze. The beer bottle slipped from his fingers and rolled across the table. Who is this? He asked. It's Lily. The name hit him like cold water. 5-year-old Lily Dawson. The little girl who lived 3 houses down. The kid who liked to sit on his parked Harley and make engine noises with her mouth. Lily? He said, sitting up straight. What's going on, little one? Her breathing came through the phone in short, shaky bursts. I'm in the closet. The words were barely louder than a whisper. What closet? In the hallway. I'm hiding. Something cold slid down Ethan's spine. Why are you hiding? There was a long pause. Then Lily said the words that would change everything. He broke my arm. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. What? Ethan said. It hurts really bad, Lily whispered. Please come get me. Ethan was already standing. Who broke your arm? Kevin? Kevin Price. Sarah Dawson's boyfriend. The man who was supposed to be watching her tonight. Ethan's heartbeat started climbing. Lily, he said carefully, forcing his voice to stay steady. Listen to me. Are you alone in the house? Yes. Where's your mom? She's at work. Her voice trembled again. Kevin got mad. Why? I spilled juice on the carpet, she said quietly. It was an accident. Ethan's jaw tightened. What did he do? He grabbed my arm. Another shaky breath. Both hands. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second, and he twisted it. Lily made a tiny choking sound. I heard it crack. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Ethan grabbed his jacket from the chair. Lily, listen to me. I'm coming. Right now. Okay. You stay in the closet. Don't come out until I say your name. Okay. Is Kevin still there? I don't know, she whispered. His truck left. Good. Ethan was already moving toward the door. I'll be there soon. How soon? Very soon. Okay. There was one more pause. Then Lily said something so small it almost broke him. I knew you'd answer. The line went quiet. Ethan shoved the phone into his pocket and stepped out into the freezing night. The cold air hit his face like a slap. His motorcycle waited at the edge of the gravel driveway, black Harley, chrome dull under the porch light. He kicked the stand up. The engine exploded to life with a roar that shattered the stillness of the valley. Headlight cutting through the dark. Ethan twisted the throttle. The bike shot forward down the dirt road. Wind clawed at his jacket. Gravel spat behind him. The engine thunder rolled across the fields like distant artillery. 7 minutes to Sarah's house. He would make it in 4. Halfway down the road, he pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed one number. Danny Cole answered on the first ring. What's wrong? Danny asked immediately. He could hear the motorcycle. Lily, Ethan said. There was a pause. What about her? Kevin broke her arm. The silence on the line turned heavy. Then Danny's voice changed. Hard. Cold. Where are you? On the way to Sarah's house. Is she alone? Yes. Is Kevin there? No. Danny exhaled slowly. I'm coming. Ethan leaned forward over the handlebars. The wind tore past him. Danny? Yeah? If he touched her. Don't finish that sentence. I'm serious. I know you are, Danny said. The engine roared louder. Just don't do anything stupid before I get there. Ethan didn't answer. The road curved toward the cluster of houses at the edge of town. A porch light glowed in the distance. Sarah Dawson's house. Ethan killed the throttle and slid the bike into the driveway. Kevin's black pickup truck was gone. The front door was unlocked. The house was dark, too quiet. Ethan stepped inside. Lily, his voice echoed softly down the hallway. It's Mr. Iron. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a faint sound, a whimper. The hallway closet door creaked open a few inches. Two blue eyes stared out of the darkness, red and swollen from crying. "You came," Lily whispered. Ethan knelt in front of her. "I told you I would." The door opened wider, and Ethan saw her arm. Bent at an angle, arms were never meant to bend. The beast inside his chest woke up, but he pushed it down. "Not now." He reached toward her slowly. "I'm going to pick you up, okay?" Lily nodded. She lifted her good arm, and Ethan Graves, the man everyone called Iron, lifted the little girl as gently as if she were made of glass. Lily weighed almost nothing. Ethan lifted her carefully, one arm supporting her back, the other cradling her broken forearm so it wouldn't move. Her small fingers clutched the leather vest on his chest as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. Up close, the damage looked worse. Her left arm curved at a sharp angle halfway between wrist and elbow. The skin was already swelling, turning an ugly purple beneath the pale light from the hallway lamp. And there was something else. A bruise on her cheek. 5 long fingerprints. A grown man's hand. Ethan felt heat rush up the back of his neck. For a moment, the hallway tilted red, the way it did when a fight started and his instincts took over. He forced himself to breathe. "Not now." "Does it hurt when I hold you like this?" he asked quietly. "A little," Lily whispered. "I'll be very gentle." She nodded and pressed her face into his shoulder. "Are we going to the hospital?" "Yeah." "They're going to fix it?" "They will." Her grip tightened on his vest. "You're staying with me?" "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the night air cut sharp across the porch. Ethan carried her down the steps and toward the driveway. Headlights swung across the gravel at the same moment. Danny's truck roared in and stopped hard. Danny Cole jumped out before the engine fully died. He took 2 quick steps toward them, and then saw Lily's arm. Danny's entire expression changed. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath. "Get the door," Ethan said. Danny yanked open the back door of the truck. Ethan climbed in and settled Lily carefully across his lap. Danny slammed the door and got behind the wheel. The truck peeled out of the driveway. Gravel scattered behind them as the engine growled down the empty road. For the first minute, no one spoke. Lily's breathing was shaky against Ethan's chest. Danny glanced at the rearview mirror. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly. Lily peeked up. "Hi, Mr. Danny. Can you tell us what happened?" Her voice trembled. Kevin got mad. "What about?" "I spilled juice." Danny nodded slowly. "That happens." "I said I was sorry," she whispered. Ethan could feel her body shaking. But he started yelling. The truck hummed along the dark highway. "What did he do next?" Danny asked. "He grabbed my arm." Her good hand made a small twisting motion in the air. "Like this." I heard it crack. Ethan's jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Then he let go and I screamed. "What did Kevin say?" Ethan asked quietly. Lily hesitated. "He said if I told anyone, he would hurt Mommy." The words came out in a rush. "He said it would be my fault." Silence filled the truck. Danny's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Lily's voice got smaller. "He said I was clumsy and stupid." Ethan shifted her gently in his arms. "Listen to me, Lily." She looked up. "What Kevin said is a lie." Her blue eyes searched his face. "You are not stupid." She sniffed. "You're not clumsy either." "But I spilled." "That happens," Ethan said firmly. "Kids spill things. Adults spill things. It's not a reason to hurt someone." She watched him for a moment. "Really? Really? And none of this is your fault?" Lily nodded slowly, but the fear was still there. "My arm really hurts, Mr. Iron." "I know." Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "We're almost there." The emergency room at Street. Catherine's hospital glowed like a bright island in the quiet town. Danny pulled up hard under the entrance lights. The sliding doors opened automatically. A nurse waiting inside looked up. Her name badge read Brenda. She took one look at the situation. 2 large men in leather vests, a crying child with a twisted arm, and Lily reaching instinctively for Ethan. "Don't leave me," Lily said. Brenda's face softened instantly. "Let's get her inside," she said. They moved quickly down the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Ethan stayed beside the bed as nurses carefully examined Lily's arm. She winced but didn't cry again. A doctor arrived minutes later. They wheeled in an X-ray machine. Danny stood against the wall with his arms crossed, silent and rigid. The image appeared on the screen a few minutes later. The doctor leaned closer. Then he sighed quietly. Spiral fracture. Brenda glanced at Ethan. That means the bone didn't just break, she explained gently. It was twisted. The room went very still. That kind of injury usually happens when someone grabs an arm and turns it hard. Ethan stared at the glowing X-ray. The thin white line spiraling through the bone looked like a crack in glass. Lily looked at him nervously. Am I in trouble? No, Ethan said immediately. You're the bravest person in this room. Brenda stepped closer. We're going to put a cast on it, okay, sweetie? Will it hurt? Just a little. Lily looked back at Ethan. You're staying? I promised. She relaxed slightly. As the nurses prepared the cast, Brenda pulled Ethan aside. Her voice dropped lower. We're required to report injuries like this. Ethan nodded. Child Protective Services will be contacted, she said. Good. And the police will likely need a statement. Good. Brenda studied his face for a moment. Then she said something unexpected. She's lucky someone answered the phone. Ethan looked toward the hospital bed where Lily sat with her small arm held still by the nurse. She shouldn't need luck, he said. She's 5 years old. The automatic doors burst open down the hallway. Footsteps rushed toward them. A woman in a diner uniform ran into the emergency room. Sarah Dawson. Her hair had fallen loose from its ponytail. Her apron was still tied around her waist. Lily! She saw the cast, and something inside her broke. She dropped to her knees beside the bed. Oh, God, baby, I'm so sorry. Lily wrapped her good arm around her mother. It's okay, Mommy. She pointed weakly across the room. Mr. Iron came. The hospital room finally went quiet sometime after midnight. Lily had cried once while they set the bone. After that, exhaustion took over. Now she slept with her arm wrapped in a bright white cast that looked enormous against her small body. Her breathing was slow and uneven. Every now and then she shifted in her sleep and made a soft whimper when the arm moved the wrong way. Ethan sat in the plastic chair beside the bed. He hadn't moved in nearly an hour. Across from him, Sarah lay half-curled beside her daughter on the narrow hospital mattress. One arm rested protectively across Lily's legs, even in sleep. The overhead lights had been dimmed. Only the low blue glow of the hallway filtered through the cracked door. Ethan watched Lily's chest rise and fall. Every breath felt like proof she was still safe. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The vibration sounded too loud in the quiet room. He stepped into the hallway before pulling it out. Unknown number. But the message preview showed only one word. Iron. Ethan opened the text. A picture appeared first. It took a second for his brain to recognize it. Sarah's house. The porch light still on. The same one Ethan had seen when he arrived earlier. Below the photo was a message. I know who you are. Another message appeared immediately after. If Sarah calls the cops, she loses that kid forever. Then the third. My uncle runs this county. Ethan stared at the screen. The hallway suddenly felt colder. Danny appeared around the corner with 2 gas station coffees in his hands. He saw Ethan's expression and stopped. What happened? Ethan handed him the phone. Danny read the texts slowly. His jaw tightened. He's threatening her, Danny said quietly. He's threatening a 5-year-old. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Danny immediately grabbed his wrist. No, I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. Danny handed the phone back. Save it. I was going to. Screenshot it too. I already did. Danny nodded. Good. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hospital ventilation hummed softly overhead. Then Ethan said, I'm going to kill him. Danny shook his head. No, you're not. He broke her arm. I know. He hit her. I know. She hid in a closet holding a phone because she was afraid to move. Danny stepped closer. And if you go after Kevin Price tonight, what happens? Ethan didn't answer. You go to prison, Danny continued calmly. Maybe for the rest of your life. Silence. Danny pointed toward the hospital room. And then, who answers the phone next time she's scared? Ethan leaned back against the wall. The anger was still there, sharp and burning, but Danny's words landed hard. Who carries her out of the house next time? Danny said. Who promises she's safe? Ethan looked down at the blood crusted along his knuckles from the wall he had punched earlier. His hands were still shaking. I can't let him walk. Danny nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Danny hesitated. Then he said something Ethan had never heard him say before. Let someone else destroy him. Ethan looked up. What does that mean? There's a lawyer in Billings, Danny said. She specializes in cases like this. Child abuse, domestic violence. She doesn't lose. Ethan frowned. How do you know about her? Danny was quiet for a long moment, the longest Ethan had ever seen. Then Danny spoke. Because she saved my life. Ethan straightened. Danny stared at the floor. My stepfather used to beat me. The words hung in the air. He put cigarettes out on my back. He broke my collarbone twice. Ethan didn't speak. He had known Danny for 18 years. Ridden beside him. Fought beside him. Bled beside him. Danny had never said a word about any of that. My mom was too scared to leave, Danny continued. But a lawyer named Margaret Hayes built the case. She got him 12 years. Danny finally looked up. She's the reason I'm standing here. The hallway felt heavier now, like the weight of something old had finally been set down. Why didn't you ever tell me? Ethan asked quietly. Danny shrugged. Because the club teaches us that victims are weak, and I spent most of my life pretending it never happened. He rubbed the back of his neck. But when Lily called you, his voice tightened. I remembered everything. Ethan nodded slowly. So what do? We call Margaret Hayes. When? Tomorrow morning. Ethan thought about it. The waiting. The patience. Everything in him hated the idea. Danny seemed to read his mind. 24 hours, he said. That's all I'm asking. And if nothing happens? Danny met his eyes. Then we figure something else out. Ethan pushed away from the wall. He took one long breath. Then another. Okay. Danny exhaled. Thank you. They walked back into the hospital room. Sarah was awake now. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked at them anxiously. Is he still out there? She asked. Danny answered gently. We don't know, but he won't come near you tonight. Sarah looked down at Lily sleeping. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear to God, I didn't know. Ethan stepped closer. He fooled you. I should have seen something. Maybe. Sarah closed her eyes. A mother is supposed to know. Ethan's voice stayed calm. Blaming yourself won't help, Lily. She needs you right now. Sarah nodded slowly. She brushed a hand through her daughter's hair. I'm not letting him anywhere near her again. You won't, Ethan said. A moment later, his phone vibrated again. Another text from Kevin. You think a biker scares me? Another message followed. Tell Sarah to keep her mouth shut. Then the last one. This town belongs to my family. Ethan stared at the screen. This time his hands didn't shake. The anger was still there, but something else had joined it. Focus. He turned the phone toward Danny. Save every message. Danny nodded. Already backing them up. Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket. Inside the hospital room, Lily stirred in her sleep. Her small fingers searched blindly until they found Ethan's hand. She relaxed immediately. Ethan stood there quietly. Kevin thought this was a fight between two men. It wasn't. It was something much bigger. And for the first time since the phone rang at midnight, Ethan decided he wasn't going to win it with his fists. Margaret Hayes arrived at 12:15 p.m. The gravel driveway crunched under the tires of a gray sedan that looked older than Ethan expected. No black SUV, no entourage, just one woman stepping out with a worn leather bag slung over her shoulder. She was smaller than Ethan imagined. Silver hair cut short, reading glasses hanging from a thin chain around her neck. Practical boots instead of heels. But when she looked up at the farmhouse, her eyes moved quickly. Window, porch, barn, tree line taking in the whole property in seconds. Nothing about her felt casual. Danny opened the door before she knocked. Margaret, Danny. They shook hands. It wasn't sentimental, just recognition. You look healthy, she said. Working on it. Her gaze shifted toward Ethan. And you must be Mr. Graves. Ethan nodded once. Yes, ma'am. She shook his hand firmly. Danny says you've been remarkably restrained. Ethan glanced toward the kitchen window where Lily's drawings were taped against the glass. Don't be impressed yet. Margaret's mouth twitched slightly. Fair enough. She stepped inside. The farmhouse kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and wood smoke. Sunlight fell across the scarred wooden table where Ethan had already set out a few printed screenshots of Kevin's messages. Sarah sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Her eyes lifted when Margaret approached. Mrs. Dawson, Margaret said gently. Sarah nodded. Margaret sat down across from her and placed the leather bag on the table. She opened it with slow, careful movements. Inside were legal pads, a small digital recorder, and several neatly labeled folders. Her voice changed slightly, still calm but now precise. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, she said. And I need the truth. All of it. Sarah swallowed. Okay. Margaret clicked the recorder on. Start at the beginning. When did you meet Kevin Price? Sarah hesitated. 6 months ago. Where? The diner where I work. Margaret wrote quickly. How did the relationship begin? He came in a few times. He was polite, funny. Sarah's voice faltered. He was good with Lily. Margaret looked up. In what way? He read her bedtime stories, Sarah said. He bought her ice cream. He fixed her bike chain once. The pen kept moving. And when did the first warning sign appear? Sarah's fingers tightened around the mug. About a month ago. What happened? She had a bruise on her back. Did you ask about it? Yes. And what explanation were you given? Kevin said. She ran into the kitchen counter. Margaret nodded slowly. And you believed him? Sarah looked down. I wanted to. Margaret didn't react with judgment. She simply wrote another note. That's called grooming, she said quietly. Sarah looked up. What? Margaret leaned back slightly. Abusers don't start with violence. They start with trust. Her pen tapped lightly against the notebook. They make themselves useful, helpful, essential. Danny crossed his arms against the kitchen wall, listening. Once the trust is established, Margaret continued, they escalate slowly. Sarah's voice trembled. I should have known. No, Margaret said calmly. You should have been able to trust the person in your home. She turned the notebook slightly toward Ethan. Predators target exhaustion, isolation, single parents working too many hours. Sarah blinked hard. So I wasn't stupid. You were tired, Margaret said. The room went quiet. Margaret reached for the printed screenshots. Now, she said, adjusting her glasses, let's talk about these messages. She studied the first image. Kevin's threat. The photo of Sarah's house. Margaret turned the page. Then the next. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. He sent these after the child was hospitalized? Yes, Ethan said. And you did not respond? No. Good. She tapped the paper. These messages are witness intimidation. Felony level. Danny leaned forward slightly. What about his uncle? Margaret looked up. Sheriff Dale Price. Yes, I'm aware of him. Ethan frowned. You are? I've had 3 cases in this county over the years. Her pen scratched across the notebook again. 2 complaints against Kevin Price disappeared after being filed with the sheriff's office. Sarah's head lifted sharply. Other women? At least 2. Danny swore quietly under his breath. Margaret closed the folder. Which means this is no longer just a child abuse case. Ethan studied her carefully. What is it? A pattern. She stood and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, Lily sat in the yard, drawing something in the dirt with a stick. Margaret watched her for a moment. Then she turned back. When juries see one victim, they sometimes hesitate. Her gaze moved across the room. But when they see 3, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sarah's voice was barely audible. You can stop him? Margaret nodded once. Yes. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest for the first time in 24 hours. Then Margaret added quietly, but only if we do this correctly. Danny leaned forward. What does that mean? No contacting Kevin. Fine. No talking to the sheriff. Better. And most importantly, she looked directly at Ethan. No violence. The word hung in the air. Ethan didn't look away. Margaret continued. If you lay one hand on Kevin Price, his lawyer will turn this case into a story about a violent biker seeking revenge. She tapped the table lightly. and Lily will become background noise. Ethan's jaw tightened. Margaret didn't soften her tone. Optics matter in courtrooms. Silence stretched across the kitchen. Finally, Ethan said, "How long?" Margaret checked her watch. 48 hours. For what? To locate the other victims, to secure the state prosecutor, and to make sure this case bypasses Sheriff Price completely. Danny nodded. State police. Yes. Sarah exhaled slowly. What do we do until then? Margaret closed the leather bag. You document everything? Every message. Every threat. She looked toward the porch. And you stay right here. Ethan frowned. You think Kevin will come here? Margaret held his gaze. Men like Kevin always escalate. Right then, Ethan's phone vibrated on the table. The screen lit up. Another message. A new photo appeared. This time it wasn't Sarah's house. It was Ethan's farmhouse, taken from the road. The porch. The barn. The dry stack of firewood beside the fence. The text beneath it read, Nice place, lot of dry wood. Be a shame if something happened. No one spoke for a moment. Margaret studied the message. Then she looked up slowly. The calm in her voice disappeared. Good, she said quietly. Ethan blinked. Good? Margaret nodded once. Yes. Her eyes were suddenly sharp as broken glass. Because now he just threatened arson. She closed her bag. And that, she said, is how arrogant men build the case that destroys them. The farmhouse settled into a strange rhythm. Not peaceful. Not normal. Something tighter than that. Every sound mattered. The creak of the porch boards. The wind moving through the dry grass. The distant rumble of a truck miles down the highway. Ethan noticed all of it. He slept very little. Most nights he sat in the kitchen with the lights off, watching the security monitors Danny had connected to the porch cameras. Grainy black and white images of the driveway and barn flickered quietly across the screen. The timestamp glowed in the corner of each frame. Every minute recorded. Every movement saved. Exactly the way Margaret had ordered. Danny moved through the house like a quiet shadow, fixing the loose hinge on the back door, checking the locks twice before bed, installing a second floodlight above the barn. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Sarah tried to act normal. That lasted about half a day. After that, she mostly stayed near Lily. The little girl spent most of her time in the *** horse room, ***, coloring pictures on the floor with a box of crayons Dr. Chen had brought during her visit. The child psychologist arrived 2 days after Margaret. Dr. Louise Chen was small, soft-spoken, and carried a canvas bag full of paper, colored pencils, and stickers. She didn't interrogate Lily. She sat cross-legged on the floor beside her and started drawing a horse. Lily watched quietly for a few minutes. Then she picked up a crayon. Soon the floor was covered with paper. Horses, cats, a stick figure man with a motorcycle, and one drawing that made Ethan stop when he saw it later. A little house, a girl inside it, and a large figure standing outside the door. The figure had the word Iron written across its chest. Dr. Chen noticed Ethan looking at it. She trusts you, she said gently. Ethan didn't answer right away. He stared at the drawing. I just answered the phone. Dr. Chen shook her head slightly. Most people don't. The texts kept coming. Kevin switched tactics every few hours. Sometimes the messages were angry. You think hiding her fixes anything? Sometimes mocking. Your biker friend can't protect you forever. Sometimes almost pleading. I said I was sorry. Margaret had been very clear. Do not respond. So Ethan didn't. Instead, Danny copied each message. Screenshots, cloud backup, timestamps. The growing file was sent directly to Margaret's office. Kevin kept building the case without realizing it. 3 days passed. Margaret called every evening with updates. She had located Tina Marshall first, 28 years old. Kevin had dated her 3 years earlier. He choked her during an argument, Margaret said over speakerphone. The kitchen fell silent. She went to the sheriff's office to file a report. Ethan already knew how the story would end. What happened? Sarah asked quietly. The report disappeared, Margaret said. Danny's expression darkened. Sheriff Price? Yes, Margaret continued. The second woman is Rachel Dunn, 31. She moved to Oregon 2 years ago. What did Kevin do to her? Ethan asked. He pushed her down a staircase. Sarah covered her mouth. Margaret's voice stayed steady. She filed a restraining order. Kevin violated it twice. And nothing happened. Danny leaned back in his chair. Because of the uncle? Yes. Margaret paused. But both women are willing to testify. Sarah looked stunned. They are? Tina said she's been waiting 3 years for someone to believe her. Margaret's voice softened slightly. And Rachel said she'll drive across 3 states if it means Kevin finally faces consequences. Ethan felt the weight of that. Years of silence. Years of fear. All leading here. Later that night, the phone rang again. This time it wasn't Kevin. The number was local. Ethan answered. Graves. A man's voice came through the line. Calm. Official. This is Sheriff Dale Price. The kitchen went completely still. Danny slowly turned toward Ethan. I understand there was an incident involving my nephew, the sheriff continued. Ethan's grip tightened around the phone. Incident. Yes, a misunderstanding. Danny mouthed the word asterisk, asterisk, misunderstanding, asterisk, asterisk with disbelief. Ethan's voice turned colder. Your nephew broke a 5-year-old girl's arm. A pause. Kids get hurt, the sheriff replied. They roughhouse. Danny shook his head slowly. Ethan said nothing for a moment. Then he spoke carefully. Your nephew also sent threatening messages. Did he? I have them. Mr. Graves, the sheriff said calmly, you have a criminal record. The words landed exactly as intended. A threat disguised as fact. Your association with the Hells Angels doesn't exactly make you a reliable witness. Danny's jaw tightened. Ethan felt the old anger stir in his chest. But Margaret's words echoed in his head. Optics matter. Good thing text messages don't have criminal records, Ethan said. Silence. Then the sheriff spoke again. You're making accusations against a respected family. I'm stating facts. Another long pause. You should think carefully about where this goes, the sheriff said. Ethan looked toward the hallway where Lily's laughter drifted faintly from the horse room. Then he answered, No. The sheriff's voice cooled. You're making a mistake. Ethan hung up. Danny stared at him. Well? He tried to bury it. Danny nodded slowly. Of course he did. Sarah looked frightened. What happens now? Ethan picked up his phone. He forwarded the call record and the sheriff's number to Margaret. Then he set the phone down. Now, he said quietly, we keep waiting. Outside, the wind had moved through the fields. Inside the farmhouse, the lights stayed on. Because everyone in the room understood something important. Kevin Price wasn't done escalating. And when men like Kevin realized fear wasn't working anymore, they usually did something stupid. The call came early. Margaret's voice was tighter than usual. Kevin Price posted bail. The words settled heavily in Ethan's kitchen. Danny stopped mid-step near the sink. Sarah's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. Ethan didn't move. How? Danny asked. His father, Margaret said. Councilman Robert Price. He put up property as collateral. Silence filled the room. So he's out, Ethan said. Yes. A small pause followed. There is a restraining order, Margaret continued. 500 feet from Lily, Sarah, and your property. Ethan leaned back in his chair. That's a piece of paper. I'm aware, Margaret replied calmly. But it still matters legally. If he violates it, bail disappears. Danny rubbed his face with both hands. You think he'll stay away? Margaret didn't hesitate. No. She paused. Men like Kevin rarely accept humiliation quietly. The line clicked off. The farmhouse suddenly felt smaller. Sarah stared at the table. I thought jail would scare him. It might, Danny said, but not the way you want. Ethan stood and walked to the window. Outside, the field stretched empty under the gray morning sky. Kevin was out there somewhere, free. Later that afternoon, Danny drove into town with Sarah to meet Margaret at her office. Ethan stayed behind with Lily. The little girl was in the barn, sitting on an overturned bucket while one of the barn cats circled her feet. Her cast was covered in stickers now. Stars. Hearts. A crooked purple horse. Mr. Iron, she said, holding up a drawing. What do you think? He stepped closer. The picture showed a horse standing on a hill. Behind it was a tiny stick-figure girl. That horse looks brave. It is, Lily said proudly. What's its name? She thought for a moment. Brave. Ethan nodded. That makes sense. The barn smelled like hay and dust. For a moment, everything felt calm. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. He opened it. You hiding the kid now? Another message followed. You think that restraining order stops me? Ethan didn't reply. He simply forwarded the messages to Margaret. Then he slipped the phone back into his pocket. The next morning, Danny returned with a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the kitchen table. Dr. Anna Reeves. Ethan glanced at the name. What's that? A therapist. Ethan looked up slowly. I don't need a therapist. Danny leaned against the counter. Yeah, you do. I'm fine. Danny pointed toward Ethan's hand. The knuckles were still scabbed over from when he had punched the hospital wall days earlier. You call that fine? Ethan shrugged. It healed. That's not what I meant. Danny pulled out a chair and sat down. I've been seeing someone for 2 years. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You? Danny nodded. AA meetings and a counselor. That surprises you? A little. Danny chuckled quietly. I used to think the same thing. He tapped the paper. Dr. Reeves works with veterans and guys who've seen too much. Ethan pushed the paper away. I'm not a veteran. You're something close. Silence stretched across the kitchen. Danny lowered his voice. You haven't slept more than 2 hours at a time in a week. Ethan didn't respond. And yesterday, when Lily dropped that glass in the sink, Danny continued, you jumped like someone fired a gun. Ethan stared at the floor. Danny leaned forward. You're carrying a lot of rage. I always have. I know. Danny's voice softened. But now there's a kid watching you. Ethan looked up. Danny nodded toward the hallway. If you self-destruct, if you go after Kevin, if you end up in prison, he didn't finish the sentence. Ethan already knew the ending. Lily would lose the one person she trusted. Danny pushed the paper back across the table. 1 session. That's it. Ethan stared at the name. Dr. Anna Reeves. 7 digits written beside it. It looked harmless. But he knew it wasn't. Finally, he sighed. 1 session. Danny smiled slightly. That's all I'm asking. The office in Billings was quiet. Bookshelves lined the walls. Soft light from a desk lamp filled the room. Dr. Anna Reeves sat across from Ethan in a plain chair. She didn't carry a notebook. She didn't interrupt. She just watched him. Tell me why you're here, she said. Ethan shrugged. My friend made me come. Is that the only reason? He hesitated. No. She waited. Ethan rubbed his hands together. Because a little girl got hurt. And I want to kill the man who did it. The words hung between them. Dr. Reeves didn't react. She simply asked another question. When did the anger start? Ethan leaned back. My father. He hadn't planned to say it. But once the words started, they didn't stop. Frank Graves. The truck driver who drank beer by the case. The man who used fists instead of words. The night Ethan's nose broke at age 9. The night his mother couldn't open one eye. The morning Frank Graves drove away and never came back. I learned something early, Ethan said quietly. What was that? That soft people get destroyed. Dr. Reeves tilted her head. And so you became iron. Yes. Ethan looked down at his scarred hands. It worked. For a while. Dr. Reeves spoke gently. Violence works in the short term. That's why people keep using it. She leaned forward slightly. But it doesn't build safety. Ethan didn't answer. Tell me something, she said. Who did Lily call the night she was hurt? Ethan's chest tightened. Me. Why? I don't know. Dr. Reeves shook her head. You do. She gestured toward his hands. Those hands have hurt people. Ethan nodded slowly. But they carried her out of that house, Dr. Reeves continued. And that's the part she remembers. The room fell quiet. After a moment, Ethan spoke again. I'm afraid if I lose control. You'll become your father, she finished. Ethan looked up sharply. She nodded once. The fact that you're afraid of that, she said softly, means you're already different. Ethan sat there for a long moment. For the first time in years, the anger didn't feel like the only thing inside him. When he finally left the office, the Montana sky was wide and pale above the highway. He drove back toward the farmhouse slowly. Kevin Price was still out there. Still dangerous. Still arrogant. But Ethan was starting to realize something important. The fight ahead wasn't just about Kevin. It was about the man Ethan Graves was going to be when this was over. Tuesday afternoon was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every small sound stand out. Wind pushed through the tall grass beyond the fence. The barn doors creaked softly as they shifted against their hinges. Somewhere inside the rafters, a pigeon fluttered its wings. Ethan sat on the front porch with a paperback book resting open in his hands. He had read the same page 3 times. The words didn't stick. His mind kept drifting back to Margaret's voice on the phone. Men like Kevin rarely accept humiliation quietly. The gravel road stretched a quarter-mile across the open field before reaching the farmhouse. From the porch, Ethan could see the whole length of it. That was the point. The first sign came as a cloud of dust on the horizon. Then, the low rumble of an engine. Ethan looked up. A black pickup truck appeared on the road. Too fast. Too aggressive. He knew the truck immediately. Kevin Price. The truck cut across the gravel like it owned the road. Ethan closed the book slowly and set it beside him. His heartbeat began to climb. Inside the barn, Lily's laughter drifted faintly through the open doors as she chased one of the cats through the hay. Ethan stood. "Lily," he called. The laughter stopped. A moment later, she appeared in the barn doorway, holding the cat awkwardly against her chest. "What? Come inside, please." "But I'm playing with Whiskers." "Now, Lily." Something in his voice made her pause. Her eyes widened. "Is it Kevin?" The truck was still coming. Ethan nodded once. "Go to the horse room. Close the door." "Okay. And don't come out until I tell you." She nodded quickly and ran toward the house. The screen door slammed behind her. By the time the pickup rolled into the driveway, Ethan was standing at the bottom of the porch steps. The engine cut off. Dust settled slowly around the truck. Kevin stepped out. He looked exactly the same. Same smug half-smile. Same careless confidence. He glanced around the property. "Nice place," he said. Ethan didn't answer. Kevin leaned casually against the truck door. "You hiding them here? You're violating a restraining order." Kevin laughed softly. "That's a piece of paper." Ethan's voice stayed flat. "Leave." Kevin ignored him. "Where's Sarah?" "Not here." Kevin's eyes drifted toward the house. "But the kid is—" Ethan stepped forward. "Don't say her name." Kevin smiled wider. "You think you can keep her from me? I think you should get in your truck." Kevin pulled his phone from his pocket. "I'm recording this." He held it up. "Go ahead," he said. "Take a swing." The invitation hung in the air. Ethan could see it perfectly. Kevin's lawyer. A courtroom. The story flipped upside down. Violent biker assaults innocent man. Kevin lowered the phone slightly. "What's the matter, Iron?" he taunted. "Afraid?" The anger rose like fire inside Ethan's chest. His fists tightened automatically. Kevin noticed. "There it is," Kevin said quietly. "That's the guy everyone talks about." Ethan stepped closer. Close enough to smell the stale beer on Kevin's breath. Close enough to end the argument in one punch. Kevin lifted the phone again. "Come on," he whispered. "Do it." For a second, the world narrowed. The old instincts pushed forward. The beast inside Ethan knew exactly what to do. Break his nose. Drop him in the dirt. End it. Then a small voice came from inside the house, barely audible through the screen door. "Mr. Iron?" Ethan froze. Kevin frowned. "What was that?" Inside the house, Lily's voice came again. "You said brave people get scared too." Ethan felt something shift in his chest. "They just don't let the scared win." His own words. Reflected back at him through the voice of a 5-year-old girl. The anger was still there, but something else pushed against it now. Something steadier. Ethan unclenched his fists. Kevin blinked. Confused. "I'm not going to hit you," Ethan said calmly. Kevin stared. "What?" "I'm not giving you what you want." Kevin lowered the phone slowly. "You think this makes you noble?" Ethan shook his head. "No." He pointed toward the road. "You're going to get back in that truck." Kevin scoffed. "And if I don't?" Ethan's voice dropped lower. "Then the cameras on this porch will record every second you stand here violating a restraining order." Kevin's eyes flicked toward the corner of the house. The small security camera blinked quietly. Red light on. "Recording," Ethan continued. "Your lawyer can explain that to the judge." Kevin's smile began to fade. You think you're clever. No, Ethan said. I think you're arrogant. Kevin's jaw tightened. You'll regret this. Ethan shrugged slightly. I've regretted plenty of things in my life. He nodded toward the truck. This won't be one of them. For a long moment, Kevin stood there, the confidence draining out of him inch by inch. Finally, he spat into the gravel. Enjoy hiding behind cameras. He climbed back into the truck. The engine roared to life. The tires spun hard against the gravel as he pulled away. The pickup fish-tailed slightly before disappearing down the road. Ethan stood there watching the dust settle. Only when the truck vanished completely did his legs begin to shake. He sat down heavily on the porch steps. The adrenaline drained out of him all at once. The screen door creaked open. Lily stepped outside carefully. Is he gone? Yes. She sat beside him on the step. The barn cat was still tucked under her arm. You didn't hit him, she said. No, even though you wanted to. Ethan exhaled slowly. Yes. Lily leaned against his shoulder. That's because you're the good kind of strong, she said. Ethan felt something break loose inside his chest. Not anger, something quieter, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Inside the house, his phone began to ring. Margaret, he answered. He came to the farm, Ethan said. I know, Margaret replied. What do you mean? The cameras just uploaded the footage. Ethan looked up at the blinking security light above the porch. Margaret continued calmly. He violated the restraining order. There was a brief pause. Then she said the words Ethan had been waiting to hear. Bail is being revoked. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and paper. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Rows of wooden benches filled slowly as people filtered in reporters, local residents, a few quiet observers who had heard enough rumors to know something serious was unfolding. Ethan sat in the back row, Danny beside him. Neither of them wore leather vests today, just plain shirts and worn boots. Danny leaned slightly toward him. You okay? Ethan nodded once. Across the room, Sarah sat near the front beside Margaret Hayes. Her hands rested tightly together in her lap, but her posture was different now, straighter, steadier. Margaret stood a few feet away, speaking with the prosecutor. Kevin Price entered the room a minute later. His expensive lawyer walked beside him, a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit named Victor Hale. Kevin tried to look relaxed, but his eyes flicked around the room too quickly. The confidence from the farm was gone. A court officer announced the judge's arrival. Everyone stood. Judge Patricia Warren took her seat, expression calm and unreadable. Be seated. The case began. The prosecutor stood first. This case concerns the assault of a 5-year-old child, he said. His voice carried clearly across the room, and a pattern of violence that extends far beyond a single incident. Victor Hale rose smoothly. Objection to characterization. Noted, the judge replied. Proceed. The first witness was the emergency physician. He described the injury calmly, professionally. The X-ray image appeared on the courtroom monitor. The white spiral line through the bone looked almost delicate. The doctor pointed at it. This is a spiral fracture, he said. And how does that typically occur? The prosecutor asked. Through twisting force applied to the limb. Could a child receive this injury from falling? The doctor shook his head. No. Why not? Falls create straight-line fractures, the doctor explained. A spiral fracture requires rotation. The courtroom stayed quiet. The doctor's final sentence landed heavily. In my medical opinion, the injury was caused by someone forcefully twisting the child's arm. Victor Hale stood for cross-examination. Doctor, he began smoothly, is it possible the injury occurred during rough play? No. Could the child have twisted her own arm during a fall? No. Is it theoretically possible? The doctor paused. Anything is theoretically possible. Hale smiled slightly. But not likely? Not remotely. Hale sat down. The next witness was Dr. Louise Chen. She spoke softly but clearly as she described her interview with Lily. A short video recording was played. The screen showed Lily sitting in a small office chair, her cast resting in her lap while she held a stuffed animal. Dr. Chen's voice in the recording was gentle. Can you tell me what happened? Lily spoke quietly. Kevin grabbed my arm. How? She demonstrated with her hands. Like this. And what happened next? I heard it crack. A faint murmur moved through the courtroom. One juror wiped at her eyes. Victor Hale objected briefly, but the judge overruled him. The testimony continued. Then Margaret stood. "Your Honor," she said, "the prosecution would like to introduce additional witnesses establishing a pattern of conduct." Judge Warren nodded. "Proceed." The door at the side of the courtroom opened. Tina Marshall walked in first. She looked nervous, but determined. She took the stand and told her story. How Kevin had wrapped his hands around her throat during an argument. How she went to the sheriff's office the next day. How Sheriff Dale Price promised to handle it personally. "And what happened after you filed that report?" the prosecutor asked. "Nothing." "Nothing?" "It disappeared." "Disappeared?" "Yes." Victor Hale stood again. "Objection." "Speculation." "Overruled," the judge said calmly. Tina continued. "I called the sheriff's office 3 times. And they said they couldn't find the report." The courtroom grew quieter. The second woman entered next. Rachel Dunn. She spoke about the stairs, about the restraining order Kevin violated twice, about moving across state lines because she believed the system wouldn't protect her. Each story built on the last, layer by layer. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Victor Hale tried to break the momentum. "You're angry with Mr. Price," he said during Rachel's cross-examination. "Yes. So you have motivation to exaggerate." Rachel looked straight at him. "No. I have motivation to stop him." The room fell silent again. Finally, Sarah Dawson took the stand. She looked toward the jury before speaking. "I trusted Kevin," she said. Her voice trembled at first, but it steadied quickly. "He was kind to my daughter." She paused. He read her bedtime stories. A few jurors leaned forward slightly. "I thought he cared about her." Her hands tightened together. "And then one night while I was working," she stopped. Margaret placed a reassuring hand on the table nearby. Sarah continued. "He broke her arm." Victor Hale rose again. "Mrs. Dawson," he began, "you left your daughter with my client unsupervised." "Yes." "You worked late hours." "Yes." "So it's possible you misunderstood the situation." Sarah looked directly at him. "My daughter called Ethan Graves at midnight." She pointed toward the back of the courtroom. Ethan felt dozens of eyes turned toward him. "She didn't call Kevin. She didn't call 911. She called the man she trusted." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "He carried her out of that house. He held her hand in the hospital. That man is not the danger." She turned back toward Kevin. "Kevin Price is." Victor Hale hesitated. For the first time since the trial began, he seemed uncertain. "No further questions," he said finally. Margaret stood for closing arguments. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't pace dramatically. She simply laid out the facts. A child with a spiral fracture. 2 previous victims. Threatening messages. A restraining order violation captured on video. She looked toward the jury. Patterns matter. She paused. "This man has followed the same pattern for nearly a decade." Her voice dropped slightly. "The only difference today is that someone finally answered the phone." The courtroom remained silent. The judge addressed the jury. "You may now deliberate." The 12 jurors stood and filed out of the room. The door closed behind them. Ethan sat perfectly still. Danny leaned toward him. "How long, you think?" Ethan shrugged slightly. "I don't know." They waited. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Finally, after 2 hours and 47 minutes, the door opened. The jurors returned. Everyone stood. The foreperson handed the verdict to the clerk. The clerk read the paper. Her voice echoed across the courtroom. "On the charge of assault on a minor." She looked up briefly. "Guilty." A quiet gasp spread through the room. Kevin's face drained of color. The clerk continued. "On the charge of child abuse causing bodily harm." "Guilty." Victor Hale closed his eyes. "And on the charge of witness intimidation and violation of a restraining order." "Guilty." Kevin slumped slightly in his chair. Across the room, Sarah covered her mouth. Danny exhaled slowly beside Ethan. The judge spoke again. "Sentencing will occur in 2 weeks." The gavel struck once. The courtroom erupted in quiet conversation. Ethan remained seated. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He simply watched as officers led Kevin Price away in handcuffs. For the first time since that night began, the fight was finally turning. Sentencing took less than 20 minutes. The courtroom was quieter than it had been during the verdict. The energy that once filled the room had drained away, replaced by something heavier finality. Kevin Price stood at the defense table. No smirk now, no casual confidence. His expensive suit looked wrinkled. His eyes were hollow, fixed somewhere near the floor. Judge Warren reviewed the charges again in a calm, measured voice. Assault on a minor. Child abuse causing bodily harm. Witness intimidation. Violation of a restraining order. Each phrase echoed through the courtroom. Kevin's lawyer sat beside him, silent. Across the room, Sarah held Lily's small hand tightly. The cast was gone now, replaced by a thin brace and careful movement, but Lily still stayed close to her mother. Margaret Hayes stood near the prosecutor's table. She did not look triumphant, just focused. Judge Warren adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Price," she said, "the evidence in this case demonstrated a sustained pattern of violence, intimidation, and abuse." Kevin stared straight ahead. "You targeted vulnerable individuals," the judge continued. "You relied on family connections and intimidation to avoid accountability." A pause followed. "That pattern ends today." She looked down at the sentencing document. "For the crimes of assault on a minor and child abuse causing bodily harm, this court sentences you to ***, 7 years in state prison, ***. The words landed like a stone in water. Kevin's shoulders sagged. For the additional charges of witness intimidation and violation of a restraining order, those sentences will run concurrently. The judge closed the file. "You will be remanded into custody immediately." The gavel struck once. Kevin didn't resist when the deputies approached. They placed handcuffs on his wrists and guided him toward the side door. For a moment, his eyes lifted. They landed on Ethan. There was anger there, but also something else, fear. Then the door closed behind him, and Kevin Price disappeared. The courtroom emptied slowly. Reporters hurried out first, then the quiet spectators. Sarah knelt down beside Lily. "It's over," she whispered. Lily nodded. "Does that mean he can't come near us anymore?" "That's right." Lily thought about that. "Forever?" Sarah smiled softly. "Forever is a long time." Margaret approached them. "He will serve at least 5 years before parole eligibility," she said gently. Sarah nodded. "Thank you." Margaret shook her head. "You're the one who testified." She looked toward Lily. "And this young lady helped more than she knows." Lily blinked. "I did?" Margaret crouched slightly so they were eye level. "You told the truth. That's the most powerful thing anyone can do." Lily seemed to consider that carefully. Then she gave a small nod. Outside the courthouse, the Montana air felt colder than usual. The late afternoon sun hung low behind the buildings. Ethan leaned against the hood of Danny's truck. He had been standing there long enough that the metal had cooled under his hands. Danny stepped beside him. "Well," he said quietly. "Yeah." Neither man spoke for a moment. Traffic moved slowly down the street. Finally, Danny said, "You expected to feel better." Ethan glanced at him. "Didn't you?" Danny shrugged. "Not really." Ethan watched a sheriff's cruiser drive past. The badge on the door reminded him of something else. "What happened to Dale Price?" Danny leaned back against the truck. "Margaret told me this morning. State Attorney General opened an investigation." "For what?" Danny ticked the charges off on his fingers. "Obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, abuse of office." Ethan exhaled slowly. "So the uncle's going down too." "Looks that way." Danny nudged him lightly. "You did good." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do anything. You didn't hit him." "That's exactly what I mean." Danny laughed quietly. "For you? That was the hardest move on the board." Ethan didn't answer. He watched Sarah and Lily step out of the courthouse doors. Lily spotted them and waved excitedly. Her small brace glinted in the sunlight. Danny straightened up. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." Back at the farmhouse, the air smelled like hay and dust again. The barn doors stood open. The horses shifted lazily in their stalls. Lily ran ahead across the paddock. "Mr. Iron!" she shouted. Ethan followed. "What's up?" She pointed proudly toward the small fenced enclosure. A gentle brown pony stood there, blinking calmly. Danny folded his arms. Rescue horse, he explained. Came from a shelter outside Billings. Lily's eyes were enormous. For me? Danny nodded. Thought you might like a riding partner. Lily approached the pony slowly. What's her name? Danny shrugged. Figured that was your job. Lily thought for a moment. Then she grinned. Brave. Ethan smiled faintly. That fits. Lily climbed carefully onto the pony with Danny's help. The animal walked in slow circles around the paddock. Lily laughed. It was the first completely carefree laugh Ethan had heard from her in weeks. Danny leaned beside him against the fence. You feel it? He asked. What? The quiet. Ethan listened. No sirens. No courtrooms. No threats. Just wind moving through the grass and Lily's laughter across the paddock. He nodded slowly. Yeah. Danny watched Lily ride another slow circle. You know something? He said. What? You're not iron anymore. Ethan looked over. Danny smiled slightly. You're just Ethan. Ethan didn't argue. He watched Lily guide the pony carefully around the fence. Her brace still made her movements cautious, but she sat tall in the saddle. Confident. Free. For the first time since everything started, Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. Not victory. Something quieter. Relief. He rested his arms on the fence rail. The sun dipped lower behind the fields. And the world, for once, felt steady again. Summer arrived quietly. The Montana fields turned from pale spring green to deep gold. Grass grew thick along the fence lines, and the barn smelled warmer now hay, leather, and sun-heated wood. Life at the farmhouse settled into something close to normal. Sarah returned to work at the diner 3 days a week. She still checked her phone too often and looked over her shoulder when trucks passed on the road, but the tightness in her voice had slowly begun to fade. The house no longer felt like a place under siege. It felt like a home again. Lily's arm healed faster than the doctors expected. The brace disappeared first, then the careful movements. Soon she was back in the paddock almost every afternoon, brushing the pony she had named Brave ***. The horse followed her everywhere. Sometimes Lily talked to the animal like it understood every word. Other times she simply rested her head against its neck and watched the wind move through the tall grass. Ethan often stood nearby, leaning against the fence. Not guarding, just being there. The difference mattered. One evening near the end of August, the sky turned the soft orange color that only happened at the edge of summer. Danny was sitting on the porch steps with a cold bottle of soda. You ever think about leaving this place? He asked. Ethan looked out across the fields. Where would I go? Danny shrugged. Anywhere. Ethan shook his head slowly. No. Danny smiled. Didn't think so. From the paddock, Lily's voice carried across the yard. Mr. Ethan. Ethan straightened. What's up? She pointed toward the gate. Come here. He walked across the grass toward the fence. Brave stood patiently nearby, ears twitching in the evening breeze. Lily held the reins carefully in her small hands. Watch this, she said. She placed her foot in the stirrup and climbed into the saddle without help. The movement was smooth, confident. Ethan leaned his arms on the fence rail. Look at that. Lily guided Brave into a slow circle around the paddock. The horse's hooves pressed soft patterns into the dirt. When she finished the circle, she stopped beside the fence again. Did you see? I did. I didn't fall. You didn't. Lily looked proud, then thoughtful. Do you remember when I was scared to ride? Ethan nodded. You said brave people get scared too. That's right. She tilted her head slightly. But they don't let the scared win. Ethan smiled faintly. You remembered. Lily guided Brave closer to the fence. Her expression turned serious. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you hit Kevin that day? The question hung in the warm evening air. Ethan didn't answer right away. The barn doors creaked softly behind them. A few crickets started chirping in the grass. Finally, he said, because hitting him wouldn't have fixed anything. But you're strong. That's not the kind of strength that mattered. Lily looked confused. What kind is? Ethan rested his hands on the fence rail. The kind that protects people without becoming the thing that hurt them. Lily thought about that carefully. That sounds hard. It is. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. You were really angry, though. Yes. Did it go away? Ethan shook his head slowly. Not completely? Then how did you stop it? Ethan glanced across the fields. The sunset stretched long shadows across the pasture. You remember the night you called me? Lily nodded. You were hiding in the closet. Yes. You trusted me to help you. She nodded again. Ethan met her eyes. I didn't want to become the kind of person you should be afraid of. Lily watched him quietly. Then she smiled. Well, you didn't. She slid down from the saddle and led Brave to the fence. Danny wandered over from the porch, hands in his pockets. Everything good over here? Lily nodded enthusiastically. I'm learning about strength. Danny chuckled. That's a big subject. Lily reached up and wrapped her arms around Ethan's waist. He stiffened slightly at first. Then he relaxed and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. You know something? She said. What? You're the good kind of strong. The words settled softly between them. Danny glanced at Ethan with a knowing look. Ethan didn't say anything. He simply watched as Lily led Brave toward the barn. The sky darkened slowly above the fields. Fireflies flickered along the edge of the pasture. The farmhouse lights glowed warm behind them. For a long time, Ethan stood at the fence, listening to the quiet sounds of the land. No sirens, no threats, just wind, crickets, and a little girl humming softly as she brushed her pony. Danny spoke after a while. You hear that? Hear what? The quiet. Ethan nodded. Yeah. Danny looked out across the fields. Funny thing about quiet, he said. What's that? You only notice it after the storm ends. Ethan rested his arms on the fence rail. The stars began appearing one by one above the valley. For the first time in a long time, he felt something steady inside his chest. Not anger, not fear, just peace. And as Lily's laughter drifted out from the barn, Ethan realized something simple. Strength didn't always look like fists. Sometimes it looked like staying calm. Sometimes it looked like answering a phone. And sometimes it looked like standing quietly in the fading light, making sure the people you care about are safe.